Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 739, and today is January 3rd, 2025, and I'm the host of the show, Kyle Anzalone. We have a lot of news to get through on today's show, but first I want to remind people to subscribe to the all-new Kyle Anzalone show. We will be rolling out new episodes of that show again next week, so again, please head on over and subscribe to the channel. All right, everyone, let's get into the news. The first story we have today is suspect in Las Vegas Cybertruck bombing was U.S. Army Green Beret. So this one is from our friend at antiwar.com, Dave DeCamp. Dave writes that the suspect in Wednesday's Cybertruck bombing that occurred outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas has been identified as 37-year-old Matthew Allen Livesberger, an active duty U.S. Army Green Beret. Livesberger was identified as the person who rented the Cybertruck, and his IDs and credit cards were found in the vehicle, but the body was burned beyond recognition, and authorities say they're waiting on DNA tests to confirm his identity. So, of course, this being a Cybertruck adds additional speculation that, there's something not fully exposed about this story. It's interesting that his IDs and his credit card survive when his body does not. And apparently he was dead before he actually set off the bomb. He was apparently shot in the head. There was a gunshot wound to the head before the bomb exploded. And so, again, this adds to some speculation that, you have a truck that I guess is capable of self-driving features. And so some have speculated that he could have been dead before arriving at the Trump hotel, which means it's not impossible that either somebody else killed him or he killed himself and then allowed the truck to drive himself to the Trump hotel. Also with this, this is somebody who's been a longtime U.S. Army veteran in the Green Berets. And so you would assume that he would have some understanding of IEDs, and the explosives that were in the truck first of all, nobody was killed in the explosion because he was already dead. 7 people were injured, but if you look at the explosion and if you look at the damage, not even the glass at the hotel was blown out. And so this actually occurred, by the way, like under, you pull up for the valet service and there's the overhead part of the hotel there. Well, this occurred underneath that, and still the blast did not blow out those hotel windows. And I guess I would assume that somebody with as much experience in warfare as a veteran of the Green Berets, he would have a understanding of explosions, car bombs, and things like that, and why putting a bunch of firework mortars in the back of a truck wouldn't necessarily be something that causes a mass casualty event. Now, it could be that this is all a part of a very elaborate suicide of some kind, to draw attention to some issue that he had preferred. I think we'll talk in a minute here that this guy had ties to Ukraine, so maybe he's concerned about Trump coming into office, and maybe he sees a way of sending a signal to Trump and Elon is to blow up a Cybertruck in front of a Trump hotel tower. There's connections to Trump, to Elon. Maybe there's something there. Other than that, this all seems very suspect. So the Las Vegas sheriff, Kevin McHill, said he was comfortable calling it a suicide with the bombing that occurred immediately after. He said no one was killed in the blast and 7 nearby people sustained injuries. I'm guessing burns from the fireworks, because they did go a long way, and certainly that is something that could hurt people. It's just not like shrapnel or the car that the Cybertruck has an all steel frame body, and so had he used some other kind of truck where the explosion would have been directed outwards instead of upwards, certainly more people could have been killed in this explosion. And again, that is something that you would assume that as a Green Beret he would have been vaguely aware of. So the Trump bombing occurred just a few hours after Shahmoud Din Jabbar, another U.S. Army veteran, plowed a truck into a crowd in New Orleans, killing 15. The FBI says there's no definitive link between the two incidents, though there are some similarities. Both Livensberger and Jabbar used the app Turo to rent the vehicles they use. Both men had previously served at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, but the fort is one of the largest U.S. military bases in the world by population size. And so it's not impossible that two men served at the same military base and would go on years later to carry out a terrorist attack using trucks on the same day. You know, it's possible that there are some coincidences here. However, it really, really, really stinks to me that these two attacks would occur in such close proximity to each other, both using trots, and both veterans of the U.S. Army who have previously served on the same base. That is very, very suspicious. And while the FBI at this point is downplaying any connection, and also just anything the FBI says at this point, or law enforcement in general, although I certainly would be a little bit more trusting of my local sheriff for some of the details than the FBI, we had to remember the Pulse nightclub shooting, where Omar Mateen went and killed 50 people, and the feds and the Obama administration allowed us to believe it was because Omar Mateen was a Muslim who hated gays. And that's why I went to a gay nightclub and shot it up. When, you know, the trial comes out and all the the trial about on his wife, during that, it all really comes out that Mateen wasn't anti-gay or wasn't closetly gay either. And that gays really weren't his target. It was just an American soft target. And so when he went to other nightclubs that night, they had armed security guards. And so he decided that he wanted a softer target, one without any armed people, and ended up at the Pulse nightclub almost by chance, right? You know, he was just, I think, essentially Googling nightclubs in the area and going to different ones until he found one, the Pulse nightclub, that didn't have an armed security guard. And so whatever the FBI is saying at this point, we could remain skeptical and we could look at the details, the facts that we do know are true, and, you know, speculate off of that. And, you know, if the truth comes out and as we get more information and we could solidify some of these stories, I will certainly bring them to you. But at this point, gotta really question the FBI. So Livensberger was the FBI said Jabbar declared his loyalty before the New Orleans attack, but there's no indication that Livensberger was motivated by anything ISIS related. Livensberger was a decorated combat veteran who had been in the Army for 20 years. The U.S. Army say he had been deployed to Afghanistan twice, Ukraine, Tajikistan, Georgia, and the Congo. Again, you know, all those tours, and the man doesn't understand IEDs and vehicle-borne vehicles a little bit better, and how to create a more lethal explosion is questionable. So the motive for the Cybertruck bombing is unclear. Using a Tesla vehicle in front of the Trump hotel could suggest have been meant to be symbolic, as we already went through. His uncle, Dean Levensberg, told The Independent he loved Trump and was always very, very patriotic soldier, a patriotic American. It's one of the reasons he was in the special forces for so many years. It wasn't just one tour of duty, which would, you know, throw some water on the claim that this was somehow targeting Trump or symbolic against Trump. So posts from social media suggest Livensberger was pro-Ukraine and may have been involved in helping to recruit contractors for the conflict. On his LinkedIn account, he posted an advertisement for a 30-day contract in Ukraine for a tactical combat casualty care instructor. He said, "I've got top 18D Special Forces medical sergeant recently established who is looking for retired maybe, who is looking for an opportunity, sent him your way." A Facebook photo believed to be from 2016 appears to show Livensberger wearing a t-shirt that says Slava Ukraini, that translates to glory to Ukraine in English. And this is a slogan that is certainly used by the ethno-nationalists in Ukraine, you know, the problematic neo-Nazi fighters, but it's also been used just more commonly. And so it doesn't necessarily indicate that this man is as a white nationalist, although it wouldn't disprove that, you know, that may be some of his ideology too. So interesting, another connection here. Ryan Ruth, who was arrested in September of 2024 for allegedly trying to assassinate Trump, was staunchly pro-Ukraine and helped recruit for Ukraine's Foreign Legion, suggesting that his motive was Trump's call to end the war in Ukraine. And again, you know, if this guy is apparently pro-Trump, doesn't really make sense that this would in any way be targeting Trump. But, you know, these are some connections to Ryan Ruth, who also tried to assassinate, or not connections to, but similarities to Ryan Ruth, who also tried to assassinate Donald Trump. All right. Next up here, moving over to Ukraine, fracturing U.S. coalition to support Kiev as Slovakia threatens to cut Ukraine's energy supply. So NATO member Slovakia is threatening to cut off its supply of energy to Ukraine over Kiev's ending a gas transit agreement with Moscow. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico called Kiev's move an act of sabotage by Zelensky. So in a video posted to his social media page on Thursday, he said, "I declare my SMER-SSD party, the ruling party in Slovakia, are ready to debate and agree in coalition on halting supplies of electricity and significant lowering of support for Ukrainian citizens in Slovakia." He added, "The only alternative for a sovereign Slovakia is a renewal of transit or demanding compensation mechanisms that will replace the loss of public finances of nearly 500 million euros. So on January 1st, a gas transit deal between Russia and Ukraine that saw the pipeline move gas to Slovakia and then further into Europe expired. Fico blamed Kiev for the deal expiring as Zelensky refused to renew the deal. Slovakia pressured Ukraine to extend the deal and previously threatened to cut energy flows to Kiev. Before Fico's latest comments, Zelensky accused Slovakia of opening up a second energy front against Ukraine. Additionally, the Ukrainian energy minister downplayed the threat, and Poland agreed to make up for any deficit if Slovakia cuts energy supplies. And that may be oversimplified, that Poland could just make up for the energy. It may be somewhat complicated, particularly given Russia's destruction of the Ukrainian energy grid, to just, have a simple and easy switch occur there that you can maybe do during peacetime. But it does seem that Poland is trying to, encourage Ukraine to go ahead and let's cut off this gas flow through Ukraine, from Russia through Ukraine. So the issue over gas shipments is the latest rip between members of the Washington-led coalition supporting Ukraine. After he was elected last year, Fico cut military aid to Ukraine, and so this has been somewhat a part of his policy. Now, next up here is another article I wrote for the Libertarian Institute yesterday: Israel to surge funding for global influence operations. So I write, Tel Aviv is planning to increase its funding for global propaganda efforts by 20 times. The surge in spending comes as Israel's public image is sagging around the world over the onslaught in Gaza. A new budget for the Israeli Foreign Ministry includes $150 million for what Israel calls Hezbollah, or it's not Hezbollah, Hezbollah, or conscientious warfare. According to the Times of Israel, the new budget is a 20-fold increase from the previous spending level. The images, videos, and reports from Gaza detailing the horrors experienced by innocent civilians have driven global protests against Tel Aviv. In the U.S., Tel Aviv's most crucial supporter, Israel's favorability has plummeted. The spending on Hezbollah is the result of a demand by the newly appointed Israeli Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar. Sa'ar secured the appointment from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is looking to maintain his hold on power as he battles multiple corruption charges. And so bringing a new party, Sa'ar and his party, into the ruling coalition, Netanyahu's ruling coalition, is a way that he could have a stronger majority in the Knesset and be less, susceptible to going to jail from the corruption trials that he is currently facing. So, according to the Israeli outlet Mariv, the program will include, among other things, research activities and public relations firms, social networks, campaign management, conferences, and events, bringing delegations of public opinion leaders to Israel, activity on campuses around the world, and politically legal activity. American college campuses were the main hot spot driving the debate in the U.S. about the Israeli destruction of Gaza in spring of 2024. University presidents received significant pushback from Washington and donors over the protests, and the Palestinian solidarity movement was largely absent from campuses during the fall semester. So this is from Sa'ar. Israel's Hezbollah efforts and conscientious warfare have for decades not received the crucial and life-saving resources and tools they require. I am determined to make change. Every shekel devoted to this cause is an investment, not an expense, and will strengthen Israel and its standing in the world. The forward notes that Sa'ar said that the ministry's activity will be carried out in cooperation with the American Jewish groups and alongside similar efforts by the Diaspora Affairs Ministry. And so, of course, that seems like there's maybe going to be a surge of funding and support for AIPAC here in the United States. That's the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And AIPAC is, very influential, especially when it comes to getting congressmen elected. They play a very heavy role in party primaries to ensure that when election times comes, American citizens really only get the choice between two different pro-Israeli candidates. So sources speaking with Jewish Insider said Sahar is holding meetings with leaders of Israeli NGOs and cultural figures to develop his public relations campaign. According to the source, during the meetings, it became clear that Sa'ar wants to make the foreign ministry more right-wing. And so certainly more, just more of a propaganda branch to justify, or at least to try to justify to the world, the Israeli genocide in Gaza. All right, next up here, this one from Dave DeCamp, January 2nd, antiwar.com. Representative Massie calls out House rules package for including measure to protect Netanyahu. So Representative Thomas Massie has called out House leadership for including a bill as a part of a proposed rule package designed to protect Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The rules package, which is set to be voted on Friday after the new House Speaker is elected, includes a bill to sanction the International Criminal Court, which recently issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu, former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas military leader Mohammed Deif. So Massie wrote on X, the United States is a sovereign country, so I don't assign any credibility to decisions of the International Criminal Court, but how did a bill to protect Netanyahu make it into the House rules package to be voted on immediately after the Speaker's vote? Where are our priorities? The bill would impose sanctions with respect to the International Criminal Court, engaged in any effort to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute any protected persons from the United States and its allies. The House passed a bill to sanction the ICC last year, but it was not taken up by the Senate. The U.S. does have a law on the books that authorizes the military to use force against the Hague-based ICC to free any U.S. or any allied government officials or service members, and it's nicknamed the Hague Invasion Act. Massie is often the sole Republican in the House who votes against pro-Israeli legislation and has been outspoken about the influence of the Israeli lobby in Congress. In an interview with Tucker Carlson last year, Massie said every Republican in Congress except him has an AIPAC babysitter, referring to the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, one of the most powerful lobbying groups in the country. Massie has gone against his own party by opposing the re-election of Speaker Mike Johnson, who has been endorsed by President-elect Donald Trump. Johnson played a decisive role in passing the $95 billion foreign military aid bill that President Biden signed into law last year. And yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we could get rid of Johnson. I'm not sure if Massie will be able to do that. I believe those votes will be cast either today on the 3rd, Friday here. So we should know by the end of the day who speaker is. And my guess is that no matter who speaker is, they are going to pass a law that sanctions the ICC to protect Benjamin Netanyahu. All right, next up here, heavy Israeli airstrikes on Gaza kill more than 60 Palestinians. So Israeli strikes pounded targets across the Gaza Strip on Thursday, killing at least 63 Palestinians, medical sources told Al Jazeera. The Israeli attacks included a strike on the tent camp in Mawasi, a so-called safe zone in southern Gaza that has come under repeated bombings. At least 12 Palestinians, including several children, and the head of Gaza's now defunct police force were killed in the strike. Walid al-Bawali, a survivor of the attack, lost 3 of his sons, Mohammed, 13, Ahmed, 11, and Abul Ramah, 7. The Israeli army called this place a safe zone. Their claims are all lies and slander, he told Middle East Eye. So Zalah Al-Lulu, another survivor of the attack, told Middle East Eye that the tent camp was hit at 1 a.m. without any warning. He said, the next thing we knew, our world was engulfed in flames. Children were torn apart. Women were torn apart. It was like the Day of Judgment. So Gaza's government media office said the attack also killed Major General Mohammed Salah, the director of the police of Gaza, and Major General Hassan Shawwa, another police official. Israel's targeting of Gaza's police force has impeded aid deliveries, making them vulnerable to looting from armed gangs, which Israel has been allowing to happen. And so I want to take just a second to explain this, because people hear Hamas or, police force in Gaza, and they assume that anybody who's involved with a police force or has, any kind of weapon or any role of any security force whatsoever in Gaza is a member of Hamas. And you have to understand that Hamas was the government of Gaza. And so just like any other place on the world, it did have a police force. And at the start of the Israeli onslaught in Gaza, the police force would protect the aid delivery so that they could actually reach their intended spots without being looted. But since Israel bombed the police force and they effectively disbanded, and at the same time allowed armed gangs to operate in areas that were controlled by the IDF. And so this effectively allowed all the aid shipments, or a large number of them, that were entering Gaza to be looted. And so you wonder if maybe the police officer here, the head police officer, was trying to reconstitute his police force to get a little bit of aid into Gaza or something like that. And Israel killed him to ensure that can never happen. So other Israeli attacks included strikes in Gaza City, which killed at least 6. In the southern city of Khan Yunis, Israel targeted a building belonging to Gaza's interior ministry and killed 6 Palestinians. A photographer in Gaza was also killed, bringing the total number of journalists and media workers killed in the strip since October of 2023 to 217. The heavy Israeli strikes came a day after the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, threatened to intensify attacks on the Gaza Strip in response to rocket fire, which caused minimum damage and no casualties in Israel. Katz said the enclave would face blows of intensity not seen in Gaza for a long time. Gaza's health ministry said in its daily update, which it releases about midday, that at least 28 Palestinians were killed, but those figures only account the dead who arrived at hospitals or morgues. The official death toll in Gaza is now at 45,581 and 108,438 injuries since the Israeli onslaught began. And of course, that is a large undercount. All right. Just when you think that the dementia-brained Biden could not do anything more reckless, apparently he was thinking about bombing Iran pretty recently. So this one from Dave DeCamp, antiwar.com, report Biden was presented with options to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan presented President Biden with options to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities during a secret meeting held a few weeks ago, Axios reported on Thursday. The report said the U.S. was considering bombing Iran's nuclear facilities if Tehran moved towards making nuclear weapons, but there is no evidence Iran has decided to take that step, a fact recently acknowledged by the CIA. Sources speaking with Axios and told Axios that Biden did not greenlight the strikes on Iran during the meetings and did not make any final decision. The report said the purpose of the meeting was only to discuss how they would respond if Iran began enriching at 90% uranium, the level needed to produce a weapon. One source said there was no active discussions about bombing Iran before President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated on January 20th. So Israel has reportedly been considering strikes on Iran's nuclear program during the U.S. transition period and saw the regime change in Damascus as a potential opportunity to do so since it took out Syria's air defenses following the fall of Bashar al-Assad. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that the Trump transition team was also considering the idea of the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. The report said Trump had discussed the possibility with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Iran is currently enriching uranium at 60%, a step that it took in 2021 in response to an Israeli sabotage attack on the Iranian Natanz nuclear facility. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, that Trump withdrew from in 2018 with the encouragement from Netanyahu, capped Iran's uranium enrichment at 3.67%, and Iran was complying with the deal up until Trump withdrew from it, and actually up to a year afterwards, as they thought that they could maybe get the Europeans to stay in the deal even if the Americans exited. They were unable to get that deal done. So, Israeli aggression in the region has prompted calls from members of Iran's parliament to rethink the ban on building nuclear weapons, but there is no sign that the Iranian supreme leader is considering lifting his 2003 fatwa that prohibited the development of weapons of mass destruction. Although I have to imagine that there have to be, at least have had, some serious conversations in Tehran about the need to make nuclear weapons at this point, just given that we don't know how this is all going to unfold, but the Iranians had to at least be considering that Trump and Netanyahu would do a preemptive attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, either under the intentionally misguided belief that Iran is building a nuclear weapon and the commitment to take it out, or just out of their own insanity and believing that they have a unique opportunity to do so, with Syria being out and weakened, that they could make this happen. Either way, highly concerning. All right, a couple stories on Syria to wrap up here for the week. Zelensky says Ukraine will establish diplomatic ties with HTS-led Syria. So on Thursday, Ukrainian President Zelensky said he was working to reestablish diplomatic ties with Syria following the takeover of the country by Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, a U.S.-designated terrorist offshoot of Al-Qaeda. So Zelensky said, "We are preparing to renew our diplomatic relations with Syria and cooperation within international organizations. I want to thank our intelligence for their security framework of these contacts." His comment came after the Ukrainian foreign minister visited Syria and met with HTS officials, including Syria's de facto leader, Abu Mohammed al-Jolani, who has been going by his real name, Ahmed al-Shara. Ukraine severed diplomatic relations with Syria in 2022 after former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, an ally of Russia, recognized the independence of the Donetsk and Luhansk republics in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian intelligence supported the HTS takeover of Syria by providing drones and drone operators a few weeks before the offensive was launched. Ukraine's military intelligence, known as the HUR, had also been reportedly involved in attacks on Russian bases in Syria. Despite HTS's al-Qaeda roots, the U.S. has celebrated the takeover of Syria and sent senior State Department officials, including Barbara Leaf, to meet with Jolani. After the meeting, Leaf announced that the U.S. will remove a $10 million bounty from Jolani's head. Jolani fought for al-Qaeda against U.S. troops in Iraq and founded the al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, known as the al-Nusra Front, which he rebranded when he merged it with several other Islamist factions to form HTS in 2017, including the remnants of ISIS. So this was not about reform, it was about creating a more powerful jihadist militia And of course, we should cut off all of our aid shipments to Ukraine if they are supporting a designated terrorist organization by the State Department. We would just leave out the debate about the U.S. supporting those same terrorists for now. All right. Last story up here today. This one from our friend Jason Ditz over at antiwar.com. U.S. sets up new North Syria base with allied Kurds near Turkish border. So at a time when Turkey is warning the U.S. to end its support for the Syrian Kurds, the U.S. and its coalition partners appear to be heading in the opposite direction. The U.S. is reportedly building a new military base in the Kurdish majority city of Kobani, right on the Turkish border. The U.S. has been backing the Kurdish SDF for years, to the chagrin of Turkey and its allies in the self-proclaimed Syrian National Army. In recent weeks, intense fighting has erupted between the SDF and the Turkey and its partners in the SNA. So far, the fighting has centered around the city of Manbij, which is further west than Kobani, but also along the Syrian-Turkish border. Turkish military officials are quoted as saying they believe they are close to victory in Manbij. Not that the fighting around Manbij is actually slowing down. The SDF has launched artillery strikes against the outskirts of Manbij, and the SNA is conducting heavy attacks against SDF positions near the Thrish-Ream Dam, even further to the west. Even if the fighting around Manbij is settled, it won't be the end of the SNA or Turkey's offensive into Kurdish territory. Kobani is clearly the top of their target list after Manbij, and villages near Kobani were reportedly shelled by Turkey. The SDF also reported shooting down Turkish drones near Kobani. Turkish officials say their goal is to wipe out the YPG, the Kurdish faction, which is the largest part of the SDF. Turkey backed the recent regime change in Syria, and their new Islamist leadership in Damascus is talking about how the Kurds can't be allowed to retain the autonomy that they carved out during the Syrian civil war. Where the U.S. fits into all this fighting over northern and northeastern Syria remains to be seen, but the U.S. is setting up another base in the middle of it, suggests it's going to be insinuating itself into the situation one way or another. The Pentagon, however, continues to insist the ceasefire between Turkey and the SDF is holding, despite Turkey insisting the ceasefire never existed in the first place. Both sides are in open warfare against one another. For now, at least, this has prevented anyone from asking the Pentagon tough questions about what its intentions of the region are going to be. And certainly we need to ask tough questions about the incoming Pentagon and what their intentions in the region are going to be as well. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the show. We'll be back with more episodes starting next week. And again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Kyle Anzalone Show. Thank you.